The escalator still runs. It climbs slowly upward, carrying nothing. No shoppers with bags, no children holding parents' hands. No teenagers killing time between classes, just empty steps, rising and falling in an endless loop. The mechanical hum echoing through a space designed for thousands, but occupied by almost no one. This is Al-Akaria Mall, or what remains of it. The fountain in the central atrium has been turned off. The basin sits empty, its tiles faded, water stains marking the edges like rings in a bathtub. Above, a glass ceiling lets in harsh desert light, illuminating dust particles that drift through air that no longer carries the smell of food courts and perfume samples. The stores are closed, not temporarily, not for renovation, not between tenants. Closed in the permanent sense. Metal shutters pulled down, signs removed, leaving only the ghostly outlines where letters once hung. Display windows dark, mannequins removed or left standing in frozen poses, wearing fashions from seasons that have long since passed. Walk through Al-Akaria today, and you walk through a monument to something that no longer exists, not just a shopping center. Something larger, a way of life, a social contract, a promise that Riyadh made to itself about what prosperity would look like and how it would be experienced. The mall is not unique. Across Riyadh, shopping centers that once defined the city's social landscape now stand in various stages of abandonment. Some are completely empty, their parking lots cracked and weed-sprouted. Others cling to half-life, a handful of stores still operating in spaces designed for hundreds, their customers wandering past closed storefronts like visitors to a museum of commerce. These are the ghost malls of Riyadh, and their silence tells a story that the city's promotional materials would rather not acknowledge. To understand what was lost, you must first understand what was built. Riyadh's relationship with shopping malls is unlike that of any other city on earth. In most places, malls are commercial spaces. Places to buy things, certainly, but fundamentally transactional environments. You go, you shop, you leave. In Riyadh, malls became something else entirely. They became the city's living rooms. The reasons are rooted in climate and culture. Summer temperatures that make outdoor gathering impossible for half the year. Social restrictions that, for decades, limited where women could go and what families could do together in public. A rapidly growing population with increasing disposable income but few outlets for spending it. The malls solved all of these problems simultaneously. Air-conditioned spaces where families could escape the heat. Gender-mixed environments where women could move freely. Entertainment options in a city that, until recently, had no cinemas, no concerts, no public amusement. The mall was not just commerce. It was freedom of a particular and constrained kind. The first generation of Riyadh malls emerged in the 1980s and 1990s. Kingdom Center Mall, attached to the iconic tower. Fazaliya Mall, another statement of architectural ambition. Al Nakhil Mall. Granada Center. Sahara Mall. Each one a destination, a landmark. A place where the city gathered, and gather they did. On Thursday evenings, the beginning of the Saudi weekend, the malls would fill to capacity. Families strolling, teenagers circling, couples walking at careful distances. The food courts became de facto community centers. The corridors became promenades. The act of shopping became secondary to the act of being there, of seeing and being seen, of participating in the closest thing Riyadh had to public life. For a generation of Saudis, the mall was where life happened. First dates, conducted under the watchful eyes of family members. Eid celebrations, marked by new outfits purchased in the final days of Ramadan. Childhood memories of ice cream and toy stores. Teenage memories of forbidden glances and exchanged phone numbers. The mall was not just architecture, it was infrastructure for living. The peak came somewhere in the 2000s. Exact dates are impossible to establish. Social phenomena do not announce their claim. But those who remember describe a period when Riyadh's malls were so crowded that parking became competitive when waiting for a table at a food court. Restaurant could take an hour when the corridors pulsed with an energy that felt like the heartbeat of the city itself. Al-Akaria was part of this golden age. Located on Elias Street, the commercial spine of central Riyadh, the mall opened in an era of optimism. Oil prices were strong. The economy was growing. A young population with money to spend was eager for places to spend it. The mall delivered 3 floors of retail space anchored by international brands that had only recently arrived in the kingdom. A food court featuring cuisines from around the world. A family entertainment center where children could play while parents shopped. A design that, while not architecturally distinguished, was functional, comfortable, familiar. Al-Qaria became a neighborhood institution. Families visited weekly. Friendships formed in its corridors. Employees built careers spanning decades. The same story played out across the city. Sahara Mall in the north. Granada Center in the east. Al-Nakil in the diplomatic quarter. Each mall had its character, its clientele, its particular role in the social fabric. Together, they formed a constellation that defined how Riyadh lived. The golden age seemed like it would last forever. Nothing ever does. The changes came gradually. Then, all at once, the first sign was competition. Riyadh's success attracted investment. If malls were profitable, the logic went, more malls would be more profitable. Developers broke ground on new projects, larger, more ambitious, more spectacular than what existed before. Riyadh Gallery, Riyadh Park, Panorama Mall, and then the giants. Mall of Arabia, Kingdom Malls, expansion. The sprawling developments that made the older malls look modest by comparison. The city's retail capacity expanded far faster than its population or spending power could support. The second sign was technology. Online shopping arrived in Saudi Arabia later than in many countries. But when it arrived with force. Noon, Amazon's Middle East operation, and dozens of local platforms offered convenience that malls could not match. Wide drive-through traffic, search for parking, and navigate crowds when packages could arrive at your door. The pandemic accelerated what was already underway. Lockdowns that kept people home for months normalized online purchasing. Habits changed. Patterns shifted. The muscle memory of weekly mall visits began to fade. The third sign was social change. The restrictions that had made malls necessary began to lift. Cinemas opened. No longer did families need to go to malls for entertainment. Restaurants proliferated throughout the city. No longer were food courts the only option for dining out. Public spaces improved. Parks, waterfronts, pedestrian areas that offered alternatives to climate-controlled corridors. The mall's monopoly on public life dissolved. For consumers, this was liberation. More choices, more options, more freedom to spend time and money in ways that suited individual preferences. For the older malls, it was existential threat. A shopping mall is an expensive thing to maintain. The economics are unforgiving. Air conditioning in a desert climate consumes enormous energy. Cleaning crews must patrol vast spaces. Security must be present around the clock. Escalators and elevators require maintenance. Common areas must be lit, cooled, supervised regardless of whether anyone is using them. These costs do not scale down with occupancy. A mall that is half empty does not cost half as much to operate. The electricity bill for cooling a space is nearly constant, whether the space is full or vacant. The security guards cannot be halved, because the stores have halved. The fixed costs remain fixed while the revenue plummets. The math becomes impossible. When anchor tenants leave the major brands whose presence attracts other retailers, the spiral accelerates. Smaller stores depend on the foot traffic that anchors generate. Without the anchor, the smaller stores suffer. When they close, the remaining stores suffer more. The spiral feeds itself. This is what happened to Al-Qaria. The major brands departed first, lured by newer malls with better locations, more modern facilities, more affluent demographics. The fashion retailers followed, then the specialty shops, then the restaurants. What remained was a handful of holdouts, stores whose leases had not yet expired, businesses whose owners had nowhere else to go, services like tailoring and phone repair that could survive on minimal foot traffic. The common areas grew quiet, the parking lots emptied. The food court that once required waiting for a table now had more staff than customers. The mall did not close in a single dramatic moment. It faded, gradually, like a photograph left in sunlight. Each month, a little emptier than the month before. Each season, a few more shutters pulled down. The ghost emerged slowly. By the time anyone noticed, the mall was already gone in every way that mattered. Not everyone leaves a dying mall. Walk through Olacaria today, and you will find them. The holdouts, the survivors, the businesses that remain when everything else has departed. There is a tailor on the second floor. He has been there for 18 years. He remembers when the corridor outside his shop was so crowded that customers had to wait in line just to enter. Now he sits alone most afternoons, watching videos on his phone, waiting for customers who come less frequently each month. Why does he stay? The rent, he explains, has become almost nothing. The landlord, desperate to maintain any appearance of occupancy, offers rates that would have been unthinkable during the Golden Age. For a business with low overhead, the economics still work barely. And there is something else. His customers know where to find him. Decades of alterations, of suits adjusted and dresses hemmed, have built relationships that survive the mall's decline. They come specifically for him, navigating the empty corridors, passing the closed stores, finding his small island of activity in a sea of abandonment. There is a mobile phone repair shop on the ground floor. The owner arrived 5 years ago, after the decline was already well underway. The cheap rent attracted him. The location, near enough to residential areas, brings a steady trickle of customers with cracked screens and dying batteries. He has never known them all any other way. To him, the empty spaces are simply the environment, not a loss to be mourned. He does not remember the crowds, the energy, the sense of possibility. He knows only what exists now, and what exists now is enough to sustain his small business, at least for the moment. There is a coffee shop near the entrance. It serves the security guards, the maintenance workers, the occasional visitor who wanders in out of curiosity or memory. The owner is philosophical about his situation. Business is slow, but costs are low. He makes enough to continue. Whether he will make enough next year is a question he prefers not to answer. These holdouts are not thriving. They are surviving, which is different. They occupy space that was designed for abundance, with businesses built on scarcity. They are the human equivalent of desert plants adapted to harsh conditions, requiring little, persisting where others could not. Their presence prevents the mall from being truly abandoned, but it does not prevent it from being a ghost. For those who remember, the ghost malls of Riyadh carry a particular sadness, not the sadness of tragedy. No one died, no disaster struck. A quieter sadness, the sadness of watching something that mattered fade into the sadness of returning to a place that shaped you and finding it unrecognizable. A woman in her 40s describes visiting Olacaria recently. She had not been in years. Her children are grown now, no longer interested in mall outings, occupied with their own lives and their own preferred destinations. But she was nearby, and curiosity drew her in. She walked through the corridors she had walked 1,000 times before, the fountain where her children had thrown coins, making wishes that they have long since forgotten. The toy store where birthday presents were chosen with agonizing deliberation. The food court table where a family gathered every Thursday, a ritual so consistent that the staff knew their order before they spoke at Olafit Goni. Not destroyed. The spaces still exist, but emptied of everything that gave them meaning. The fountain dry, the toy store shuttered, the food court reduced to a few struggling vendors and acres of empty tables. She did not stay long. There was nothing to stay for. The mall that existed in her memory no longer corresponds to the mall that exists in reality. She was visiting a ghost, and ghosts offer poor company. This experience is not unique to her. Throughout Riyadh, a generation carries memories of malls that no longer match their current state. The gap between memory and reality creates a particular kind of dissonance, a sense of loss that is difficult to articulate because what was lost was never properly valued until it was gone. No one eulogizes shopping malls. They are commercial spaces, after all, temples of consumption, cathedrals of capitalism. They are not supposed to matter in the way that homes matter, or neighborhoods, or landmarks of genuine cultural significance, but they do matter. Or they did, to the people who spent their lives in them, who built their social worlds around them, who experience community and connection in their climate-controlled corridors. The ghost malls of Riyadh are monuments to a way of life that existed and ended. And like all monuments, they ask to be remembered. What happens to a ghost mall? The question has no single answer. Different spaces face different fates, determined by location, ownership, market conditions, and the particular visions of those who control them. Some will be demolished. The land beneath a failed mall often retains value even when the structure does not. In a city as land-hungry as Riyadh, prime locations cannot remain vacant forever. The bulldozers will come, eventually. The concrete will be broken. The steel will be hauled away, and something new will rise: apartments, perhaps, or offices, or another mall that believes it can succeed where its predecessor failed. Olakaria's future likely lies in this direction. Its location on Elias Street is too valuable to remain underutilized indefinitely. The current structure, aging and largely empty, represents a poor use of expensive real estate. Eventually, the calculations will favor replacement over renovation. The mall will disappear, and something else will take its place. Some will be repurposed. Around the world, dead malls have found second lives as warehouses, distribution centers, medical facilities, educational institutions. The large open spaces that made them functional as retail environments can be adapted to other uses. In Riyadh, this path is less common. The regulatory environment, the availability of alternative spaces, and the economics of conversion make repurposing challenging. But it is not impossible. Some struggling malls have converted portions of their space to offices, gyms, or entertainment venues, attempting to find new purposes for structures built for old ones. Some will simply persist. Not thriving, not dying, but existing in a kind of commercial purgatory. Enough tenants to prevent complete closure. Enough revenue to cover minimal maintenance. Not alive in any meaningful sense, but not quite dead either. This limbo can last for years. The ghost mall continues to open its doors each morning, turns on its lights, runs its escalators, maintaining the appearance of function while the substance of function has long since departed. And some, perhaps, will be reborn. Retail is cyclical. Consumer preferences shift. What is unfashionable today may become desirable tomorrow. A ghost mall in the right location, with the right investment, could potentially return to relevance, though such resurrections are rare and the conditions that enable them are difficult to predict. The futures that await Riyadh's ghost malls are multiple and uncertain. What is certain is that the golden age will not return. The ghost malls of Riyadh are symptoms of something larger. They are not simply failed businesses or poor investments. They are evidence of a city that builds faster than it can sustain, that creates new spaces before old ones have served their purpose, that consumes its own past in a relentless pursuit of a future that is always arriving and never quite here. Riyadh is a city of radical impermanence. Buildings that seemed permanent a decade ago are demolished for new construction. Neighborhoods that defined eras are erased from it. The landscape shifts so rapidly that longtime residents describe feeling like strangers in their own city. The malls are part of this pattern. They were built with confidence, as though the conditions that made them successful would persist indefinitely. They were abandoned without ceremony, replaced by newer models that promised to be better, bigger, more aligned with shifting tastes. The ghost malls stand as reminders of what this velocity costs. Not just money, though the financial losses are substantial, but memory, continuity, the sense that places can endure, that the spaces where we build our lives will remain recognizable over time. In Riyadh, this sense is difficult to maintain. The city moves too fast. The construction never stops. What exists today may not exist tomorrow. The mall where you celebrated childhood birthdays becomes a parking lot. The parking lot becomes a tower. The tower becomes, eventually, another candidate for demolition. This is not unique to Riyadh. Cities everywhere struggle with the tension between development and preservation, between growth and memory. But Riyadh's speed and scale intensify the tension, compress the timelines, make the losses more visible and more rapid. The ghost malls are casualties of this acceleration. They are also witness to its empty spaces that testify to what was built and what was abandoned. Two promises made and promises broken, to the gap between the city's ambitions and its ability to sustain them. The escalator still runs. Up and down, carrying no one. The mechanical hum fills the empty atrium, a sound that was once drowned out by voices, by music, by the ambient noise of thousands of lives intersecting in commercial space. Now it is the only sound. A ghost mall is not just a failed business. It is a record of what a city believed about itself at a particular moment. A testament to confidence that proved unfounded. A monument to a way of life that existed and ended. The fountain is dry. The stores are closed. The corridors stretch, empty under lights that still burn, illuminating nothing. Somewhere in Riyadh, a new mall is opening. It is bigger, brighter, more spectacular than what came before. The crowds gather for its grand opening. The stores filled with merchandise. The food court hums with activity. How long will it last? The ghost malls cannot answer. They can only stand and wait and remember what it felt like when the crowds were here. Before the silence came, before the emptiness settled in, before they became monuments to something that no longer exists.